Have you ever felt like you were always on the edge of a cliff, with your heart racing for no apparent reason? Or perhaps you know someone who avoids certain situations as if they somehow posed a mortal danger? Anxiety can manifest in various ways, some subtle and others utterly debilitating. But did you know that there are at least 7 different types of anxiety disorders, each with its specific symptoms, causes, and treatment approaches? Let's start with the first and most well-known, Type 1. Generalized anxiety disorder, the famous GAD, is like if the mind were a time machine that only travels to an uncertain future, carrying a trunk full of what-ifs. Imagine that, for those with GAD, this constant state of alertness doesn't take breaks, doesn't have a day off. It's a worry that doesn't choose a time or place, intruding into routines, work, leisure moments, spoiling that party that should be all joy. And the most intriguing thing is that often this anxiety doesn't have a clear reason. It's not as if there's a lion in the room, but the person feels as if there were. You might be wondering, but why does this happen? Well, it's not so simple. It seems that GAD has to do with a complicated mix of our genes, what we experience while growing up, and the things we face every day. It's as if the brain creates a habit of worrying and changing habits. Well, we all know that's not easy. The good news? There's a way out. Therapies, especially those focused on behavior, are there to teach us to calm this restless mind, to put worries in their proper place. And, in some cases, medications come as allies in this journey, helping to balance what our body, on its own, is having difficulty regulating. So, if you find yourself always stuck in this loop of worries, remember, there is hope and help available. You don't have to navigate this storm alone. Type 2. Panic disorder. Imagine that out of nowhere, without any warning, you're hit by a storm of pure terror. Your heart decides to run a marathon without you moving. Your hands turn cold, cold sweat drips, and your whole body starts shaking. And then, to top it off, your mind screams that something terribly bad is about to happen. It sounds like a scene from a suspense movie, but it's the reality for those facing panic disorder. The scariest part is that these panic attacks come uninvited. You could be calm, doing something routine, and suddenly, without warning, find yourself in the middle of an awake nightmare. And it's not just a scare or a normal worry. It's an experience of fear so intense that those who go through it often become afraid just thinking it might happen again. But hey, people dealing with panic disorder aren't without hope. There are specialized therapies that act as true compasses in this storm, helping to understand and manage these attacks. And in some cases, medication comes in as a reinforcement, helping to decrease the frequency or intensity of these episodes. The important thing is to know that, despite feeling like you're alone in this, there are professionals and treatments that can help you find solid ground again. It's not easy, but with the right support, it's possible to regain control over your life without the constant fear of a new panic attack. Before we continue, I want to extend a special invitation to those who seek peace and balance. Come and discover my ebook, Anxiety. I see you, I understand you, and I dismiss you, full of techniques and tips that transform my life. Take advantage of this opportunity now by clicking on the link in the first comment of this video and take the first step towards a more serene and happy life. Do not miss this unique opportunity. Returning. Type 3. Social phobia or social anxiety disorder. This one I didn't know about, but I identified some aspects in myself. You know when you have to speak in public and it feels like suddenly everyone has become a theater critic just waiting for you to slip up? Now imagine feeling that way about any social interaction, even a simple hi to the neighbor or ordering a pizza over the phone. That's the reality for those facing social phobia, also known as social anxiety disorder. It's not just a matter of being shy or reserved. It's an intense fear of being judged, evaluated, or even humiliated by others, to the point of avoiding social situations at all costs. This fear can be so overwhelming that it directly interferes with the person's ability to live a normal life. Working, studying, or simply hanging out with friends can seem like an impossible mission. But between us, there's hope. Treatment for social phobia can be a real game changer. Therapies focused on how to deal with these situations, understanding the origin of this fear, and learning to feel more secure in social environments can truly help change the game. And then, little by little, with the right support, it's possible to start seeing yourself participating in social life in a way that once seemed like just a distant dream. So if you identify with this or know someone going through these situations, remember, you don't have to face this alone. Social phobia is challenging, yes, but with help, patience, and understanding, it's possible to rewrite this story. Type 4. Separation anxiety disorder. Just imagine, you or a loved one need to leave for work or even take a short trip, and it triggers a whirlwind of fear and anxiety. We're not talking about normal homesickness, but a profound and overwhelming fear of separation that feels like it's going to swallow you whole. That's the reality for those facing separation anxiety disorder. And believe it or not, it's not exclusive to children. Adults can also suffer from it, and quite a lot. For those living this reality, the idea of being away from safe people or places can generate such anguish that it greatly limits life. Work, studies, relationships, everything can be compromised. And often, this fear arises or intensifies after a traumatic event or major life changes, such as the loss of a loved one, for example. But if you find yourself in this situation, know that therapies focused on facing and managing this anxiety can make a huge difference. And in some cases, help can also come in the form of medication. The important thing is to seek help and understand that, despite the fear of separation seeming like an insurmountable giant, there are ways to diminish its shadow and allow you to live more freely. It's not an easy path, but with the right support, it's possible to regain independence and tranquility step by step. Type 5. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. Have you ever had that moment of doubt if you locked the door or turned off the stove? Now imagine that doubt turning into an almost physical need to check it not once, but several times. Or feeling that if you don't wash your hands exactly a certain number of times, something terrible will happen. That's the daily life of those living with obsessive-compulsive disorder, the famous OCD. It's not simply being perfectionistic or liking things well organized. It's a matter of obsessions and compulsions that take over a person's mind and behavior. OCD is like having a scratched record in your head, where unwanted thoughts, the obsessions, keep repeating endlessly. And the compulsions? They're attempts to scratch the record, to do something to stop that song that won't leave your head. However, in reality, these repetitive actions rarely bring the desired relief and often only increase anxiety. The good news is that OCD isn't an unsolvable puzzle. With treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy, which helps the person understand and change these patterns of thinking and behavior, many people can significantly reduce symptoms and improve their quality of life. It's not an easy path, but it's possible, with patience and the right support, to learn to control these impulses instead of being controlled by them. If you identify with this or know someone in this situation, remember, seeking help is the first step to turn the tide. Type 6. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Imagine going through something extremely frightening, something that shakes your life in such a way that it feels like the world will never be the same again. It could be an accident, a natural disaster, a violent situation, or even the terror of war. This experience doesn't just stay in the past. It starts to invade your present in ways you never imagined. That's the scenario for those living with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. People with PTSD can feel trapped in a loop of replaying that traumatic moment, reliving everything through intense flashbacks or relentless nightmares. Imagine being here now talking to me and suddenly a sound, a smell, or even any scene throws you back to that moment of horror. That's how it works, and it's not just reliving, it's as if the danger never passed. Places or situations that remind them of the trauma become forbidden territories, and the state of alertness is constant, as if at any moment, everything could happen again. Now, the good news, PTSD is treatable. Therapies like cognitive behavioral therapy, or EMDR, which is a super interesting technique that helps process these traumatic memories, can really make a difference. In some cases, medications also help deal with symptoms. The path to recovery can be challenging, but it's possible. The most important thing is to seek help because no one should carry the weight of trauma alone. And then, gradually, you begin to rebuild your sense of security and regain control of your life. Type 7. Specific anxiety disorder, specific phobias. Ever thought about having such a huge but so huge fear that just imagining that situation or object makes your heart race and you feel like you can't breathe? That's the world of those living with specific phobias. We're not talking about the normal apprehension of encountering a spider or looking down from a tall building. We're talking about an intense fear, the kind that paralyzes, that makes you avoid certain situations, objects, or activities at all costs. For example, some people can't even think about boarding a plane without having a panic attack, or they take a detour just to avoid passing near a dog. And it's not a matter of being dramatic or exaggerated. It's a physical and emotional reaction that the person can't control. The brain triggers the extreme danger alarm for something that, rationally, we know isn't so threatening. But know that specific phobias are, in fact, one of the anxiety types with the best responses to treatment. Exposure therapies, for example, can be incredibly effective. Just imagine facing, little by little and in a controlled manner, what scares you so much until one day that monster doesn't seem so terrifying anymore. It's a challenging process, of course, but many people can overcome, or at least significantly reduce the impact of these phobias on their lives. So if you find yourself avoiding certain things you'd love to do, or places you'd like to visit because of a fear that seems bigger than you, know that there is hope. With the right support, you can indeed start to change this story and open the doors to a world full of possibilities that once seemed out of reach. Now, let me ask you something. Have you felt your heart racing for no apparent reason? That feeling of suffocation that hits you at the most inconvenient times? And what if I told you that these are just 2 of the 7 troubling signs that you may be consumed by anxiety? Don't miss the next video where we'll discuss the 7 signs that could indicate you're experiencing an anxiety process. If you or someone you know is struggling with anxiety, remember that there is help available, and taking the first step to seek support can be the beginning of a journey to a calmer and happier life.